There is a whisper within you that has always been there. Before you were named, before you were taught, before you were shaped by the hands of the world, there was a voice not of sound but of knowing. It did not shout, it did not demand. It simply existed like the breath in your lungs, like the tide drawn silently toward the moon. That whisper is God. And God speaks not in thunderclaps, not in doctrines, not in the noise of striving minds, but in the soft pulse of intuition. You were born with this compass. It did not need to be installed or earned. It is not given only to the special or the holy. It is woven into the very fabric of your being, a sacred GPS from the divine that guides, not with maps, but with feelings, a sense, a knowing, a subtle tug in the direction of your soul's path. And yet, we doubt it, we silence it, we override it with logic, with fear, with voices not our own. We learn to trust everything but ourselves. But the soul is patient. It waits beneath the noise. It watches quietly as we search outside for answers that live within. It watches us pray for signs while ignoring the ones rising like warmth in our chest. It watches us chase approval when what we really seek is alignment. And still, it does not condemn. It waits, because that's what love does. It waits to be remembered. Intuition is not a guess. It is not a hunch. It is not the byproduct of luck or chance. It is the language of spirit. It is the way God moves in you not as command, but as invitation. The Tao calls it the way. Jesus called it the kingdom within. Rumi called it the voice that doesn't use words. Whatever the name, the truth remains. There is something in you that knows. It knows when to stay. It knows when to go. It knows when to speak, and when silence is the deeper answer. It does not debate. It does not explain itself. It simply arrives and waits for your trust. But trust is not something we were taught to give ourselves. We were taught to analyze, to evaluate, to outsource our knowing to others with louder voices or shinier titles. We were taught that wisdom wears robes or degrees or microphones. But what if the wisest teacher you will ever know is the quiet presence inside you? The one who knows what your soul came here to express long before the world told you what you should achieve. To follow your intuition is to return to yourself. To reclaim the sacred agreement you made before you arrived in this body. It is to say, I trust the knowing in me more than the opinions around me. It is to walk not by sight, but by presence. There will be times this path feels irrational, illogical. There will be times it looks like you're walking away from opportunity, from safety, from what others call success. But the soul is not here to follow maps drawn by fear. It is here to walk the sacred, often invisible path of truth. And truth is rarely convenient, but it is always liberating. The ego wants guarantees. It wants proof. It wants to know where every step will lead before it takes the first. But intuition asks for faith. Not blind faith, but embodied faith. The kind that says, I may not know where this road ends, but I know I am being guided. And isn't that what freedom really is? Not certainty, but surrender. God doesn't need to speak in burning bushes or parted seas to get your attention. God is already speaking in the unease you feel when you betray yourself, in the joy that rises when you follow your calling, in the synchronicities that seem too precise to be coincident, in the still voice that says this is right when everything else says play it safe. That is God, not out there, in here. You don't need to earn divine communication. You don't need to chant it into being or fast for 40 days. You only need to listen. And listening is not about ears, it is about stillness, about tuning the dial inward, about valuing the signal over the static. So be still, be quiet. Let the world spin without dragging you into its chaos. Listen not with effort, but with surrender. And what you will hear is not instruction, it is remembrance. You will remember who you were before the world convinced you to forget. You will remember that you are not separate from the source that created you. You are an expression of it. And that source has never stopped speaking. You've only stopped believing that you are worthy of its voice. But you are. You are not an accident, fumbling through chance. You are a divine intention, unfolding with sacred precision. And every intuitive nudge, every gut feeling, every deep yes and sacred no is a breadcrumb on your path back to your own light. You are not here to conform to the noise. You are here to embody the stillness. And from that stillness, you will create. You will love. You will serve, not because you're striving, but because you're aligned. So trust what you know, even when it makes no sense to anyone else, especially then, because your soul did not come here to be understood by minds conditioned in fear. It came here to be lived fully, freely, fearlessly. Let intuition be your guide, not your backup plan. Let it lead, not follow. Let it speak louder than the world's fear and softer than its noise, because that is how God speaks. Not in the storm, but in the silence that follows. And in that silence, may you hear the sacred truth. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are not waiting for your path. You are already on it. And your intuition is the sound of God walking with you. There is no map more sacred than the pull within your own chest. No scripture more immediate than the feeling that arises before thought tries to name it. You do not need to consult the stars when the constellations are already carved into the silence behind your breath. Intuition is not a faculty of the mind. It is the language of the eternal, passed from the infinite into the still waters of your being. And yet, how often we turn from it, as if the still small voice could not possibly hold more wisdom than the loudness of the world. But let me tell you this, the world has never known what your soul came here to become. It has opinions, yes, but not insight. It has commentary, but not clarity. Only in that sacred stillness will you hear the truth that needs no justification. There will be moments in your life when logic tells you one thing and your spirit pulls another. And it is in those moments that the divine is inviting you to remember where you come from. You are not here to live a life so predictable that your soul forgets it is alive. You are here to dance with mystery, to follow the wind even when the destination is unclear, to say yes to the path not because it is proven but because it is yours. And in that yes, you enter into covenant with the infinite. A covenant that says, I trust the deeper rhythm of life more than the temporary comfort of safety. Do not mistake ease for alignment. Sometimes the intuitive path is narrow. Sometimes it requires letting go of hands you thought you'd hold forever. Sometimes it invites you to walk alone, not as punishment, but as purification. The soul is not here to accumulate applause. It is here to remember its light and live it, even when no one else sees the glow. And when you dare to follow the whisper, when you dare to say yes to that which has no name but feels like home, you begin to experience a kind of grace that cannot be explained. Doors open without being knocked upon. The right words find you when you stop rehearsing. People appear not because you chased them, but because you became a match for what your soul was calling in. This is not magic. This is not luck. This is alignment. And alignment happens when you allow God to be more than a concept. When you let God live through you, not as doctrine, but as direction. Not as something to worship from afar, but as something to embody from within. You see, God does not shout commands from the clouds. God flows as your longing. God rises as your intuition. God is the breath that whispers, go here, when no one else understands why. And if you listen with the ears of your soul and not the noise of your mind, you will know. You will not need to justify. You will not need to defend. You will simply walk in truth. And that truth will set your spirit free. And yes, there will be resistance, not from your soul, but from the parts of you that have been trained to distrust yourself. The voices of the past, the echoes of old wounds, the ghosts of should and must and don't you dare. But even they, when met with compassion, will quiet, because fear cannot stand in the presence of remembered divinity. And when you remember that your soul is not separate from God, that your intuition is not inferior, but sacred, that your knowing is not delusion, but direction, then you return, not to a new place, but to the place you never left, the core of your being, the home of your spirit, the temple within where God has been whispering all along. You may ask, how do I know if it's intuition or fear? And the answer is not in analysis, it's in feeling. Fear screams. Intuition whispers. Fear contracts. Intuition expands. Fear hurries. Intuition is patient. The more still you become, the more easily you will feel the difference. Because the voice of God will never shame you into change. It will not manipulate. It will not coerce. It will only call. And that call may not always make sense to the mind, but it will always make peace in the heart. Peace not as the absence of challenge, but as the deep knowing that you are walking in step with something eternal. So when the nudge comes, honor it. When the quiet no arises, respect it. When the gentle this way rises up from the belly of your being, follow it. Even when it leads you away from logic, even when it contradicts the advice of those who love you, especially then, because no one else can live your soul's path but you. No one else can interpret the language of your intuition. It is coded specifically for your journey, tailored by the divine for your unfolding. And let this truth settle into your bones. You are not missing anything. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. The only distance between you and the life your soul longs for is the space between ignoring and honoring your inner knowing. And when you close that gap, when you say yes to the soft voice that has never stopped speaking, you will remember what freedom feels like. Not the freedom of having it all figured out, but the freedom of being fully yourself, unapologetically, intuitively, divinely guided. Let the world chase its noise. Let others run toward the approval of those who have forgotten their own souls. But you are being called inward. You are being called home, to the center, to the silence, to the place where God speaks not in fire or thunder, but in the simple, sacred sound of your own intuitive heart. And when you begin to live by this voice not once, not occasionally, but as your natural rhythm, you will notice that life no longer feels like a riddle to be solved, but a river to be trusted. The struggle to control, to plan, to predict will start to dissolve like mist at sunrise, because you will have realized that certainty is not what your soul was after. It was never control that gave you peace, it was connection. And intuition is the sacred thread that ties you to the infinite, not as a subject, but as a participant in divine orchestration. You are not here to calculate every step. You are not here to forecast every outcome. You are here to respond to the wind that moves through your spirit and says this way, and sometimes that way leads into the unknown, into the valley where the map ends. But the unknown is not your enemy, it is the canvas of God. It is where the sacred shows its face, not in definition, but in presence. And in those spaces where the mind panics, the soul exhales, because it knows something the intellect never could, that life is not about building a fortress, it's about opening a gate. When you live from intuition, you stop seeking signs from the sky and start honoring the signs inside. The subtle unease that rises in certain rooms, the clarity that floods in unexpected moments, the relief you feel when you finally speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. These are not accidents. They are alignment. They are God speaking not in language, but in resonance. And to live this way is to become fluent in the holy, not in reciting texts, but in embodying them. This embodiment does not come through striving, it comes through surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of illusion. The illusion that you must earn your guidance. The illusion that wisdom only arrives with age or authority. But the child knows things the adult forgets. The bird does not analyze the wind before it flies. The tree does not doubt its right to bloom. And you were never meant to question the voice that was placed in you by the very hands that crafted the galaxies. So listen as you breathe. Trust as you walk. There is no greater prayer than presence, no greater obedience than authenticity, and no greater offering to the world than a soul who has decided to live according to the sacred instructions etched quietly into their own heart. Let your life be that prayer. There will come a day when the world grows quiet, not because it has silenced itself, but because you have ceased to ask it for answers. You awake not in panic, not in the fever of ambition, but in a stillness so deep, so ancient, that it feels like being reunited with the first breath you ever took. It is there in that timeless calm that intuition becomes not just a guide, but a companion. A sacred presence walking with you, no longer needing to prove its worth or make itself loud. And in that moment, you realize it was never guidance. You lacked, it was trust. Trust not in the world, not in fate, but in your own divine knowing. And as you begin to trust, not with trembling hesitation, but with the sureness of one who remembers where they came from, life starts to unfold differently. You stop measuring your worth by accomplishments. You stop comparing your timeline with anyone else's. You start to understand that the path you are walking is not linear, it is spiral, it is sacred, and it is your own. You are no longer seduced by the rush, by the mirage of someday, by the pressure to have it all mapped out. Because you feel it now, don't you? That deep, gentle unfolding that requires nothing but your attention, that current beneath the surface, flowing with a love too vast to explain, too present to deny. It doesn't ask you to fix yourself. It doesn't ask you to prove your readiness. It simply asks you to listen. And as you listen, things begin to fall away. The need to be understood, the fear of missing out, the urge to chase what never felt right to begin with. It all dissolves like shadows at dawn when you let your life be directed not by the echoes of the past, but by the living truth arising in each breath. You start to see that intuition is not just a tool for decision making, it is the living language of your soul. It is how the divine moves through you, how the infinite shapes your path, not from a distance, but from within. And the more you obey this inner knowing, the more life meets you with grace. Not always in ways you expect. Sometimes the doors close, sometimes the detour appears, sometimes what you thought you wanted falls apart. But now, you no longer see this as failure. You see it as realignment. You understand that intuition is not here to appease your ego, it is here to fulfill your soul. And the soul does not need comfort to grow. It needs truth, it needs silence, it needs space, and most of all, it needs your presence. So be present, not to fix, not to force, but to feel. Let the moment be your teacher. Let the pause between your plans be the place where your greatest guidance arises. You don't need to go out and get more. You need to go within and hear more. There, in the sanctuary of your spirit, you will hear what the world cannot tell you. That you are guided even in your confusion, loved even in your fear, held even when you feel alone. That voice you sometimes doubt, it is older than time. It is wiser than logic. It is the echo of the divine reminding you that every part of your journey, even the messy, uncertain parts, is holy. And if ever you begin to stray, if ever you forget and begin again to seek your answers outside, the voice will still be there, waiting, unmoved, unwounded, because truth is eternal. Because God never withdraws from the temple of your being. And your intuition, your sacred, ever-present compass, is proof that you have never, not for a single breath, been without guidance. And as you walk deeper into this awareness, a new way of being begins to take root, not imposed, not rehearsed, but revealed. You no longer seek to dominate the day or conquer your tasks like a soldier at war. Instead, you rise with reverence, as one who knows that the ordinary is infused with the extraordinary, that the mundane is drenched in the sacred. The first breath upon waking becomes a communion. The simple act of placing your feet upon the floor becomes a blessing. And with every movement, every word, every moment of quiet attention, you begin to align not with the expectations of the world, but with the rhythm of your own soul. This is not passive living. This is powerful surrender. It is the kind of strength that does not shout. It does not need to convince. It simply is rooted, unwavering, immovable as a mountain, because it is no longer identified with the ever-changing winds of opinion and circumstance. Intuition becomes your foundation, not because it always shows you the clearest route, but because it always points you toward truth. And truth is not a straight line. It bends, it meanders. It leads you through valleys that others avoid. It tests your patience, your faith, your trust in what cannot be seen. But in those unseen spaces, in those invisible turns, you meet the deeper parts of yourself, the parts that were buried under years of striving, masked behind the image of who you thought you needed to be. And something miraculous begins to happen. You soften, not into weakness, but into wisdom. You stop needing to protect yourself from the world, because you realize the world cannot take what you no longer cling to. You let go not of your dreams, but of your insistence on how they must unfold. You let go of urgency, because urgency was the language of fear. You let go of needing to be ahead, because ahead was always a mirage. And in this letting go, you do not lose yourself, you find yourself. You return to the place you never truly left, the center of your being, where intuition and divinity speak in the same voice. And from this place of knowing, your life begins to change, not in spectacle, but in substance. You no longer need to chase. You attract not by effort, but by essence. You stop auditioning for love and instead become the presence that invites love to rise in others. You speak not to be heard, but to express the overflow of alignment. You create not to impress, but to reveal what is already whole within you. And everything you do becomes an extension of your connection with Source. Every decision becomes a prayer. Every action becomes a form of listening, because you are no longer the one making life happen. You are the one allowing life to move through you. And even in difficulty, yes, especially in difficulty, you lean into intuition like a hand reaching out in the dark. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what truth is trying to find me here? You stop fighting what is and instead become curious. You let the pain speak, not as punishment, but as portal, because your soul knows what your mind forgets, that the path of intuition does not lead you around your wounds, but straight through them. And it is there, in the very center of your ache, that the voice of God often speaks the loudest, not in volume, but in clarity. And so you begin to trust not just the voice within, but the unfolding of your entire journey. You no longer see delays as denials. You no longer see closed doors as failures. You see divine timing at work, orchestrating a life you could never have planned but were always meant to live. You become less reactive, more receptive, less anxious, more attuned, less in need of outcomes, more in love with the process. And in this space, life begins to whisper its secrets, not because you demanded them, but because you became quiet enough to hear. This is the grace of intuition. It doesn't rush, it doesn't beg, it doesn't force. It simply invites you back again and again to the stillness that never left. And when you live from that stillness, you become a different presence in the world. You are no longer seeking to be something. You are radiating what you already are. And that is where the real transformation begins, not in effort, but in remembrance. Not in striving, but in surrender. Not in becoming, but in being. There comes a moment in the journey, often unnoticed, when you no longer need to be convinced that you are guided, you simply know. Not because the path is free of difficulty, but because your inner compass no longer wavers in the face of uncertainty. You trust not because everything makes sense, but because everything feels aligned. You are not waiting for the universe to prove itself to you. You are moving in harmony with it. And this is the quiet miracle of intuition. It transforms your relationship with life itself. You begin to feel the difference between momentum and movement. You no longer equate busyness with purpose. You sense the weight in your body when something is off. You recognize the heaviness in a yes spoken when your heart meant no, and you honor it. You make room for it. You no longer shame yourself for not fitting the mold. You see now that the mold was never meant for you. It was designed by those who forgot how to listen to their own soul's music. But you are listening now, and what you hear is sacred. It comes not in perfect sentences, but in sensations. A calm that enters a room before words are spoken. A subtle stirring when your spirit brushes against something true. A knowing that rises up like a tide when your feet finally touch the ground that was meant for you. This is how the divine speaks, not with fanfare, but with familiarity. You recognize the voice not because it is loud, but because it feels like home. And in this sacred remembering, you no longer need to chase experiences for validation. You no longer seek the next thrill to feel alive. Your aliveness is not dependent on externals. It is rooted in the eternal. It is anchored in the awareness that every breath is enough. That presence is not just a practice, it is a portal. When you are present, the veil between the seen and unseen begins to thin. The moment becomes alive with intelligence. The breeze carries messages. The sunlight feels like a conversation. Even the silence has a texture, a weight, a warmth. You begin to understand that the goal was never to reach a destination. The goal was to wake up within the journey itself. To be so attuned to your inner voice that you no longer fear making the wrong turn because every path becomes part of the becoming. Even your missteps carry medicine. Even your detours deepen the devotion. You are not failing when things fall apart. You are being refined. You are being stripped of what was never truly yours. And in the ashes of what once was, the voice of intuition becomes even clearer, even purer, even more sacred. And so when the mind begins to spiral, when the fear begins to claw, when the world's noise grows louder than your own heartbeat, you remember to pause, to return, to breathe. Not as a technique, but as a ceremony, a holy act of reconnection. You do not need to escape. You only need to re-enter yourself, your body, your breath, this moment. Because the voice you seek has never left. It has simply been waiting for you to turn your face inward again. And as you make this return again and again, something within you begins to change. You stop asking for signs that you are on the right path because you feel it in your bones. You stop doubting whether your steps are enough because each one is guided by something older than time. You become your own sanctuary. Your presence becomes your practice. And in that presence, the world begins to soften. Not because it changes, but because your vision clears. You see beauty where you once saw burden. You feel grace where you once felt lack. You hear God not as a voice booming from the heavens, but as the quiet unfolding of every moment lived in truth. And this is what it means to live intuitively, not to float above life, but to enter it fully. Not to escape, but to embody. Not to be perfect, but to be profoundly real. Real enough to listen. Real enough to trust. Real enough to follow the thread of your own becoming, even when the path disappears beneath your feet. Because intuition does not promise ease, it promises alignment. It does not guarantee safety, it guarantees truth. And when you walk in truth, you walk in power. Not the power that controls, but the power that creates. You become the artist of your own becoming. Not because you force the masterpiece into existence, but because you allow the canvas of your life to be painted by the brush of divine wisdom. And now, as the river of these words approaches its silent ocean, you may begin to feel a stillness, rising a sacred hush, settling in the spaces between your thoughts. Not as an end, but as a beginning. A return not to what was, but to what always is. For this journey we've walked together was never about collecting new beliefs, but about shedding the false ones. It was never about finding new ground to stand on, but about remembering that you are the ground, the quiet, unwavering presence. Beneath every wave, every wind, every passing cloud of emotion. You no longer need to search for the voice of God in the thunder or the fire, for you have found it in the silence. You have discovered it, not in the applause of the world, but in the sacred resonance of your own intuitive heart. And what you feel now is not something I have given you, is what was always within you, waiting like an ancient seed beneath the snow, responding to the warmth of your attention. Let yourself feel this. Let yourself fully arrive here in this very breath, not as a visitor, but as the owner of this holy space within. You are not being led to something outside of yourself. You are being brought home to your own divine rhythm. And the whisper that guides you, the still small voice you've learned to trust, is not just an echo of the divine, it is the divine, flowing through your unique form, moving not ahead of you or behind you, but as you. You were never meant to live from the outside in. You were never designed to chase truth down crowded avenues of thought. You were meant to bloom from the inside out, to awaken to the eternal presence that has never left you. And now you know. Now you remember. Your steps may still be uncertain. The path may still twist and turn. But you walk now with a sacred companion, the voice within that speaks without words, the compass that never lies, the flame that never dies. There is no need to force what flows. There is no need to beg for what already belongs to you. Let the soft guidance of your intuition become your prayer. Let your silence become your sanctuary. Let your life become your offering, not polished, not perfect, but real. Let your presence be your purpose. Let your breath be your teacher. Let your knowing be enough. You are not here to impress the world. You are here to express the truth of your being. And that truth does not come from striving. It comes from listening. And what you have heard in this sacred space beyond my voice, beneath the words, is the voice of your own soul rising. Clear, gentle, unmistakable, divine. Trust it. Follow it. Let it carry you not to where you think you should go, but to where you are meant to be. And in that sacred unfolding, may you finally come to see you are not merely guided by God. You are how God speaks, and you always have been. There is a presence within you that has never been confused. It has never doubted. It has never hurried, nor has it ever feared. This presence, sacred and still, existed before your name was spoken, before your story began, before your first breath touched the air. And this presence, my friend, is the voice of the divine whispering through you, not from afar, but from within. You are not adrift in a meaningless universe. You are not a product of chance, nor a mistake to be corrected. You are not here to hustle for worthiness, to chase approval, or to endlessly rearrange the outer world in hopes that your inner ache might finally be silenced. You are here for something far deeper. You are here to awaken to the truth that there is a plan already unfolding through you, not written in the stars, but etched in your very soul. The divine plan is not a distant prophecy waiting in the clouds. It is the breath you're taking right now. It is the moment your heart broke and the moment it healed. It is the tear that fell and the courage that rose. It is the gentle nudge that something more is possible and the ancient knowing that something more is already here. You see, the ego believes it must build its destiny with effort and will. It strives, it performs, it clings to outcomes like a drowning man to driftwood. But the soul does not strive, it aligns. It aligns with what is eternal, what is formless, what cannot be seen but is always present. When you begin to live in alignment, life stops being a battle and becomes a surrender. Not a surrender to defeat, but a surrender to flow. A surrender to the intelligence that orchestrates the blooming of flowers and the migration of stars. That same intelligence lives in you. There is a divine choreography to your life. And every step, even the ones that felt like stumbles, were part of the dance. Every closed door, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer was not a mistake, it was a redirection. A sacred rerouting towards something your mind could not yet comprehend. For the mind sees only fragments, but the soul sees the whole. And the soul knows that what looks like loss is often the space where something greater is about to enter. When you let go of forcing, of fixing, of constantly trying to manipulate life into your version of success, something miraculous happens. You begin to trust, you begin to rest. And in that rest, you begin to receive not just what you want, but what you were born for. This is not passive. This is not about giving up. This is about stepping into your true power, not the power of control, but the power of connection. The connection to the source that knows your path, even when you don't. Have you ever stood before the ocean and felt its pull without understanding its depths? Have you ever watched a leaf fall with perfect timing, landing gently on the surface of a still pond? That is how life unfolds when you align with the divine. Not with chaos, but with grace. Not with struggle, but with trust. Not with ego, but with soul. And yet, we resist, we grasp. We question, why is this happening to me? But the deeper question, the transformative question is, why is this happening for me? What if every delay was protection? What if every loss was a hidden mercy? What if every detour was leading you not away from your purpose, but directly into it? You are not here to force the tide. You are here to sail with it. You are not here to dominate the moment. You are here to meet it. You are not here to convince the world of your worth. You are here to remember that you are already enough, already held, already guided. The great sages have all pointed to this truth. Lao Tzu spoke of the Tao, the way that cannot be spoken, yet can be felt when we cease striving. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you, not in some future reward, but in your presence, your now, your alignment. Rumi whispered, "What you seek is seeking you, because he knew there is no distance between the desire of your soul and the source of your becoming. So stop running. Stop trying to outrun your pain or fast-track your joy. Sit, breathe, feel, let the stillness rise. Let it remind you that you are not the storm, you are the sky it moves through. You are not the noise, you are the silence that holds it. You are not separate from the plan, you are the plan, unfolding perfectly, even when it feels like falling apart. This is the way of the divine, not linear, not logical, but always loving, always guiding, always holding you in the arms of something far vaster than your mind can conceive. And as you return to this alignment, not once, but moment by moment, choice by choice, thought by thought, you will begin to feel it. Not just believe it, but know it. Deep in your bones, you are not alone. You never were. The divine never left you. It only waited for you to be still enough to hear its whisper. And now you're listening. And now it can lead. When you release the compulsion to mold life into the shape of your desire, you begin to feel something even more powerful, life, molding you into the shape of your purpose. Not the one crafted by ambition or dictated by the voices of the world, but the one whispered to you by the divine the moment your soul agreed to arrive here. That whisper has never stopped. It has only been drowned by the noise of should and someday and not yet. But underneath it all, it waits. It waits like the sun behind the clouds, unmoving, unwavering, and wholly committed to your awakening. You do not need to push the river to make it flow. It already knows its direction, and so do you. Buried beneath every doubt is a compass that never needed calibration. It was never broken. It was only ignored. The truth is, you do not need more answers, you need deeper listening. There is a rhythm, a sacred pulse that lives in your breath, and when you align with it, the current of life begins to carry you. Not without effort, but without struggle. Not without movement, but without resistance. Because alignment doesn't remove the wind, it teaches you to sail with it. Do not confuse control with power. The ego seeks to control because it fears, but the soul surrenders because it remembers. Remembers that this life, this body, this story, it is not the totality of who you are. You are the awareness behind it all. You are the space into which the moments arise and dissolve. And in that space, there is no anxiety, no hurry, no need to manipulate the unfolding. There is only peace. Pure, silent, unshakable peace. And that peace is not found by achieving more or acquiring more or being more. It is remembered when you become less. Less busy, less noisy, less distracted. For in the quiet, everything real begins to speak. The trees speak, the wind sings, the stillness becomes symphonic, and suddenly you understand your life is not random, it is not fractured. It is not off course. It is a sacred orchestration that only reveals its beauty when viewed from within. So if you are tired, let it be holy. If you are lost, let it be sacred. If you are confused, let it be a divine invitation to not figure it out, but to be still enough to let it find you. Your confusion is not a punishment. It is the clearing of space for deeper wisdom to take root. The old maps no longer fit because your soul is drawing new ones, ones that do not take you somewhere out there, but bring you deeper in here. You are not called to make sense of the divine plan. You are called to trust it. You are not asked to understand every detour. You are asked to keep walking. For every step, whether forward or sideways or seemingly backward, is a brushstroke in a masterpiece too vast to be seen up close. But from the higher view of the soul, it is all perfect. Every ending, a hidden beginning. Every failure, a redirection. Every heartbreak, a cracked shell through which more love could enter. When you align with this knowing not as theory, but as embodiment, you begin to walk differently. You stop clenching. You stop forcing. You stop trying to bend the world to match your expectations, and instead, you allow yourself to be bent by the wisdom of grace. And grace will bend you gently. Grace will not break you. It will shape you into something more fluid, more open, more willing to be led by the unseen hand of love itself. This is not weakness. This is not surrender to fate. This is surrender to truth. The truth that your life is not a random collection of events. It is a revelation. Each moment peels back another layer. Each breath invites you to remember that the divine plan is not written in the stars. It is encoded in your being. You don't have to look for it. You only have to remove what covers it. Fear covers it. Doubt clouds it. But presence reveals it. And presence is always available, not in some future destination where you've solved it all, not in some ideal version of you where you've healed it all. Presence lives here in this breath, this heartbeat, this sacred now. And the more you return to now, the more the plan becomes clear. Not through sudden revelations, but through subtle alignment. A word that resonates, a pull towards something beautiful, a quiet nudge that says, yes, this way. Let yourself follow that nudge. Let yourself be moved without needing to justify it. The soul speaks in direction, not explanation. And when you honor its whispers, life begins to meet you in magical ways. Doors open, people appear, circumstances shift. Not because you demanded it, but because you surrendered to it. You align with the divine rhythm, and that rhythm, once entered, carries you farther than all your striving ever could. There is a softness here, but do not mistake it for fragility. This softness is the power that holds stars in orbit. It is the same softness that allows a river to carve mountains. It is the power of the feminine, within all things the yielding, the allowing, the receiving. And it is in your yielding that you begin to receive, not by chasing life, but by inviting it. Not by commanding the plan, but by becoming the space through which the plan can flow. You are the vessel. The current is already flowing. You need only to become clear enough, still enough, open enough for it to move through you. And when it does, you will know, not in the way the mind knows, with facts and logic, but in the way the soul knows, with a peace that cannot be shaken and a joy that needs no reason. And so you surrender not with resignation, but with reverence. You surrender not because you are weak, but because you finally realize that real strength is not in forcing life to bend to your will, but in bowing to the greater will that lives through all things. You stop trying to control the wind and instead become the sail. You stop questioning every wave and instead become the vessel that trusts the ocean, knows its depth far better than your mind ever could. And in this surrender, something sacred awakens. It is not loud. It does not arrive with fanfare. It does not need to. It emerges like morning light through an open window, gently illuminating everything that had been hidden. You begin to see the hidden grace in every delay, the quiet miracle in every mundane moment. You begin to feel deep in the marrow of your being that you are being held, not by circumstance, but by something eternal, something that has always known you, something that has never left you, even in your loneliest hour. It does not speak in sentences. It speaks in sensations, in peace where there should be fear, in a quiet confidence when everything around you seems uncertain, in an urge to keep walking even when the road disappears beneath your feet. This is the voice of alignment. And the more you trust it, the more you realize that the divine plan was never about comfort, it was about truth. It was never about achievement, it was about remembrance. It was never about the path being easy, it was about the path being yours. Because only your path could awaken you in the exact ways your soul came here to be awakened. Only your life with all its textures and contrasts could be the perfect curriculum for your becoming. And when you begin to see your life not as a problem to be solved, but as a teacher to be listened to, the struggle dissolves, the resistance softens. You begin to bless even the moments that once broke you, because now you see they broke the shell, not the soul. They shattered what was never you to reveal what always was. You see, the ego clings to what is known, even if it hurts. It would rather suffer with certainty than expand into the mystery. But the soul knows that the mystery is not the enemy. It is the womb of all creation. When you align with the divine plan, you do not run from the unknown. You walk into it with open arms, trusting that the light will meet you one step at a time, not all at once, not with a map, but with a promise that you are being led. And you are being led by dreams that do not make sense to others, by desires that come from a place you cannot name, by longings that do not fit into your timeline, but fit perfectly into your soul's unfolding. Stop dismissing those whispers. Stop calling them silly or impractical. They are the seeds of the sacred. They are the breadcrumbs left by your higher self, leading you home. And home, dear soul, is not a place. It is a state of being. It is the deep exhale of finally being aligned with who you really are, not who the world told you to be, but who the divine dreamed you to be before time began. And when you begin to live from that alignment, you stop asking, what should I do? And begin asking, what is the most authentic expression of love I can offer in this moment? Because that is what alignment is. It is living from love. Not the fleeting conditional love the ego trades in, but the eternal, unshakable love that simply is. That gives without needing. That speaks without performing. That moves without proving. This love is the essence of the divine plan. It is the thread running through every joy and every sorrow. And it is calling you not to figure it out, but to embody it, to become a living reminder that the plan is not separate from you. It is not happening to you. It is happening through you. Every choice you make in alignment with love, every moment you act from truth instead of fear, every time you say yes to what lights you up and no to what dims your soul, you are not just living the plan. You are fulfilling it. And fulfillment, true fulfillment, does not come from the applause of the world. It comes from the quiet knowing that you have honored the truth within you, that you have shown up, not as a role, not as a brand, but as a soul, that you have dared to be real in a world addicted to the artificial, that you have chosen depth over image, presence over performance, meaning over noise. You become a vessel for the divine not by becoming extraordinary, but by becoming fully, unapologetically, luminously you. And that is the secret the ego doesn't want you to know. That you were never meant to be someone else. You were meant to remember that who you are when aligned with the sacred is more than enough, not because of what you do, but because of what you allow to move through you. So let it move through you. Let grace pour through your words. Let peace flow through your actions. Let love radiate through your being without needing to control where it lands. You are not the source of the light, you are the lamp through which it shines. And the more you clear away the dust of fear and doubt, the more clearly the light will shine. You were not sent here to change the world by force. You were sent to remind it of the light by becoming it. That is alignment. That is the plan. And it is unfolding perfectly now. And so the plan continues, not as a roadmap with destinations neatly labeled, but as a divine unfolding written in the language of your soul's quiet agreement with life. It moves not in straight lines, but in sacred spirals, guiding you not forward as much as deeper. Deeper into your essence, deeper into your being, deeper into the realization that what you once feared as loss was the pruning of illusion, and what you once called failure was the holy invitation to rediscover your true nature. There comes a point, perhaps slowly, like a dawn unnoticed, until the world is bathed in gold, when you realize you no longer need to be anything other than aligned. Not successful in the eyes of others, not impressive by the standards of a restless society, but attuned to the deep inner hum that says, yes, this is true. And when you live from that space, when your actions rise from alignment rather than ambition, everything begins to change. Not because the world suddenly cooperates, but because you no longer require it to. Your peace is no longer tethered to outcomes. Your worth is no longer entangled in approval. Your joy is no longer postponed for some imagined future where everything is finally fixed. No, your joy begins to live in the now, in this breath, in this seemingly ordinary moment that becomes extraordinary the moment you bring your full presence to it. This is where the plan reveals itself most clearly, not in the mountaintop revelations, but in the still spaces between heartbeats, in the way your body softens when you stop trying to prove anything, in the way your soul exhales when you finally let yourself be enough. Alignment does not make life easier, it makes it real. It peels away the noise and reveals the truth that was always there, like sunlight waiting behind the curtain. And the truth is this: you are not here to force your way through life like a storm. You are here to become so deeply rooted in truth that your very presence is the calm after the storm. You are here to remember that when you move from alignment, you move with the current of the universe itself. And the universe does not hurry. There is no urgency in the blooming of a rose, no anxiety in the journey of a river, no panic in the rising of the Sunday. And yet we live in a culture that glorifies the grind, celebrates the sprint, praises the exhaustion that comes from being always in motion. But your soul does not thrive in speed, it thrives in stillness. It grows not through hustle, but through harmony. And harmony comes not by doing more, but by being more fully who you already are. To live aligned with the divine plan is to become an instrument through which life plays its most beautiful song. And you do not choose the notes. You do not control the tempo. You simply keep yourself in tune. You quiet the mind. You open the heart. You release the grip. And in doing so, you allow the music of the cosmos to play through you. This is what the sages meant when they spoke of surrender, not giving up, but giving into the flow of something higher. Not abandoning effort, but abandoning the illusion that you must carry it all alone. There is no greatness in spiritual pride. There is only humility, and in that humility, a greatness far beyond the ego's imagination. To walk this path is not to seek the spotlight, but to become the light. Not to demand certainty, but to embrace mystery. Not to control life, but to trust it so deeply that even the unknown becomes sacred. Even the shadows become teachers. Even the pauses become prayers. You will not always feel aligned. There will be days when doubt returns, when fear finds its way in, when the noise of the world feels louder than the whisper of your soul. But alignment is not about perfection. It is about returning again and again, like breath, like tide, like prayer. You return not because you failed, but because you remembered. You remembered the silence. You remembered the stillness. You remember that the way home is always just one breath away. And in this return, there is renewal. In this return, there is redemption. In this return, there is resurrection, not of something dead, but of something forgotten. The part of you that knew before the world told you to forget. The part of you that trusted before learned to defend. The part of you that loved without conditions, without walls, without needing to be loved in return. This part of you is not gone. It is waiting. Waiting for your yes. Waiting for your softening. Waiting for your willingness to live not as a reaction to fear, but as a response to love. This is what it means to align with the divine plan. To live as if love were your origin, your language, your destination. Because it is. And when love becomes your compass, you stop seeking validation. You stop chasing meaning. You stop begging the world to reflect back your worth. And instead you become the mirror through which the world sees its own divinity. You walk into rooms and something shifts not because of what you say, but because of who you are. You touch lives not by teaching them, but by showing them what it looks like to live without the need to be anything other than true. You become an anchor, not by standing still, but by standing rooted in truth, in presence, in soul. And the beautiful paradox is this: the more you align, the less you need, the less you grasp, the less you try to possess or persuade. Because now you are possessed by something holy. You are persuaded only by love. You are full, not in the way the world defines fullness, but in the way a tree is full of roots, full of stillness, full of quiet knowing. This is your invitation, not to change your life, but to change your relationship with it. Not to rewrite your story, but to see it through new eyes, the eyes of love, the eyes of the divine. And when you do, you will find the plan was never hidden. It was only waiting for you to see. And so, as you begin to live not from resistance, but from reverence, something astonishing happens. Life begins to respond not to your effort, but to your essence. The people who come into your orbit, the opportunities that whisper your name, the timing of events that once felt chaotic now begin to move in harmony, like stars obeying a hidden constellation. It is not that the world has changed, it is that you are now seeing it through the lens of alignment. And when your vision is clear, everything becomes a message, a gesture, a sacred mirror. That aching conversation you've been avoiding becomes a doorway to deeper truth. That season of stillness you once resented becomes the fertile soil where your soul learns to bloom without applause. That failure you feared would define you becomes the very path that frees you from the tyranny of needing to succeed at all. Because now you know success is not about accumulation, it is about authenticity. It is not measured in metrics, it is measured in moments, in the depth with which you touch the now, in the courage with which you walk your truth, in the tenderness with which you treat your own unfolding. Let go of the idea that you must rush toward anything. The divine plan has never been a race. It is not unfolding according to clocks or calendars, it is unfolding according to readiness. And readiness is not when you've checked every box. It is when you finally say yes to where you are. When you stop trying to escape the now and start sanctifying it. The now is not in your way, it is your way. It is the altar upon which the next miracle will arrive, not because you forced it, but because you prepared your presence to receive it. Do not underestimate the power of your presence. Do not undervalue the vibration you emit simply by being aligned. You may think your healing is a private affair, but it is not. Every moment you choose to live from truth instead of trauma, to speak from soul instead of defense, to love without needing it ripples, it echoes, it changes the frequency of the field around you. This is not mystical fluff, it is spiritual physics. You are energy, and your energy is your offering. So when you begin to walk through your life with quiet certainty, no longer performing, no longer pleasing, no longer proving, you become a sanctuary. A safe place for others to rest, a lighthouse for those still lost in the storm of seeking. And not because you are better, not because you have all the answers, but because you have finally become available to the presence that holds them all. And this availability is the most sacred act of service you can offer. You do not need to go out and save the world. You need only to stop abandoning yourself. Stop betraying your knowing. Stop outsourcing your joy to a future that never arrives. And instead embody the miracle that is already here, already breathing, already beating within your chest. And yes, there will still be pain, there will still be endings, there will still be moments that bring you to your knees. But now you will kneel not in despair, but in devotion. You will weep not from loss, but from the awe of knowing that even this is part of the unfolding. You will not fear the dark, because you will have touched the light within you that no shadow can extinguish. This is the holy paradox. Alignment does not shield you from life. It roots you so deeply within it that you no longer need to run. You can stay, you can breathe, you can feel. You can face each wave not as a victim, but as the ocean. Not as the storm, but as the sky. Not as the wound, but as the witness. And the more you witness your own becoming, the more tender you become toward the becoming of others. You no longer judge their pace. You no longer mock their fear, because now you remember your own, and in remembering you soften, you bless, you hold space. And that space becomes the very medicine this world so desperately needs. Not another doctrine, not another opinion, but presence. Pure, spacious, unguarded presence. So do not fear your sensitivity. Do not apologize for your depth. The world has enough armor. What it needs is your open heart, your unfiltered gaze, your unshaken trust in something higher than your own plans. That trust will not make you naive, it will make you invincible. Because once you know that the divine is not just around you, but within you, fear loses its grip, scarcity loses its voice, and time loses its tyranny. You begin to move differently, not as someone trying to arrive, but as someone who has already arrived, and is now simply allowing life to move through them, like wind through leaves, like light through glass, like love through a willing heart. And what greater purpose could there be than to become a living conduit for that love? What greater success than to walk through this life with your soul intact, your spirit at ease, and your heart wide open to the sacred choreography that never needed your approval, only your participation. And so you participate fully, freely, faithfully, because now, finally, you trust the plan. And in trusting the plan, you have become it. And so, as you walk ever deeper into this quiet alignment, you begin to feel the soft but seismic shift from seeking to surrender, from effort to embodiment, from striving to simply allowing yourself to be the sacred vessel through which the divine expresses its infinite love. You are no longer chasing signs, no longer bargaining with the moment, no longer measuring your worth by the weight of your results. You are at last resting in truth. And truth, when allowed its full expression, does not ask for applause, it simply radiates. It doesn't try to convince or convert. It doesn't wear robes or carry banners. It lives in the simple gestures, in the ordinary grace of being fully present. It is found in the hand laid gently on the heart during moments of stillness. It is whispered in the breath that says, I am here, even when the world feels far away. You become deeply familiar with the silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence that is fullness beyond form. The kind of silence that holds galaxies, that listens to your soul without needing to fix it, that sits with your wounds without recoiling. This is the silence from which all creation emerges, and now you are finally at home within it. You see the plan now, not because it was revealed in some grand revelation, but because you no longer need it to be. You've come to trust that not knowing is its own form of wisdom, that the pause is just as holy as the progression, that being here fully, vulnerably, courageously is the destination you once thought was somewhere else. And so your energy shifts. It no longer says, I must become. It says, I now allow. And in that allowance, there is birth. The birth of your true life, not the life the world rewarded, but the life your soul came to live. You become unafraid to disappoint illusions. You let the false fall away without mourning. You no longer reach for masks when discomfort arises. You stay naked in your truth, and you discover it's enough. You're enough. You always were. Even the mind begins to slow its spinning. It too, weary from the labor of fear, begins to rest in the deeper intelligence of the heart. The chatter becomes a murmur. The analysis dissolves into awareness, and you begin to hear that deeper voice, the one that never shouted but always knew. It does not ask you to do more. It asks you to become less of what you are not. It does not point to the future. It anchors you into the sacredness of this eternal now. And in this now, there is no judgment. There is no race. There is no one to compete with, no audience to impress, no script to perform. There is only presence that holds all things, receives all things, honors all things, without needing to label them right or wrong. This is the return to innocence, not the ignorance of childhood, but the wisdom of the unconditioned self. The self that does not carry shame, the self that does not grasp for meaning, because it is meaning. The self that knows, I am here, I belong, I am the breath of the divine made visible. And from that knowing, life begins to pour through you, not as a task, but as a song without effort, a song that lifts others, not because you try, but because you are aligned. And in that alignment, you touch eternity. The grief no longer breaks you, it baptizes you. The fear no longer paralyzes you, it purifies you. The longing no longer consumes you, it leads you back to yourself. Because now you know the divine plan was never about fixing your life, it was about freeing your soul. It was about stripping away every falsehood until only love remained, until only presence remained, until only this moment and the sacred stillness within it was enough. And now it is. Now you no longer ask for the light, you remember that you are it. You no longer fear the dark, you honor it as the sacred contrast that reveals your glow. You no longer plead for purpose, you walk as purpose wherever your feet may go. There is a stillness here, deeper than peace. A stillness that cannot be taught, only remembered. It does not depend on your circumstances. It does not waver when the world shakes. It is the stillness of the mountain, the hush of the stars, the echo of source saying, welcome home. No need to return anywhere else. No need to become anything else. No need to seek anything more. Just breathe and be. For the plan is not coming. The plan is not delayed. The plan is not broken. The plan is you. And in this breath, this holy exhale of surrender and knowing you have aligned, not with a concept, not with a future, but with the divine itself. And now, beloved soul, you are free.